Okay, this video, this is basically a continuation of the video that we have used before. Before we had just one level configured, and this level was configured as a resistive input on input number 2, and the sender was connected between input number 2 and ground. Now we have added another sender which is connected between input number 1 and ground, and as well we have added a battery which is connected from ground and input number 7. So we have got right now two inputs of senders, so two tanks, fresh tank, or two diesel tanks, fresh tank and diesel, two diesels, or whatever. And we've got one battery as well. Now, to calibrate or to make it work, I go to the Albacombi webpage and I go to channels. Now, the channel that I was configuring before was channel number 2, which is in ohms. Seen there is in resistance mode, and is fluid level, and is configured already. So if I go to channel number 1, this channel is already configured with channel number tank 2. It is set up as general fluid, units in percentage, with the limit high and low. This only relates to the alarm with the relay or collector output. Otherwise, it makes no sense. It makes no active action. Filter level and the sensor type. Filter level is low reduction, medium reduction, as before. I will always left in low reduction, which is low damping, and the sensor type is I will take the 0 to 180 ohms. Now, whenever I select a different sensor, I have to save it. Once save it, everything is calibrated. Say that I'm measuring, I check it out in here, what is the sensor reading, and this is 120, I reduce it, it's 140, it's 50, 53, 39, so I check it out, 39, now 71 ohms, this correlates to 38%. So this is assuming a linear tank. If the tank is not linear, I can add calibration points at will. Say that I would say 180 ohms is going to be full deflection, which is 100%, but when the tank is reading say 90 or 85 for that respect, the tank is having just 30%. So in that sense, I have created a non-linear tank. I will save it and I can check it out. So now the sensor is in its medium position. I'm measuring more or less in its medium position. I'm measuring around 95 ohms, 93, something like that, and I say which is the reading calibrated. So you see that I'm getting 35%. So it means that when the sender is at half the reading, I'm not getting 50%, I am getting a little bit less. So I can add as many points of calibration as I want to compensate or to accommodate non-linear tanks. If I just want to have a linear tank, I just select my linear calibration. I press save, and presto, I've got a linear calibration. Now, I've got, as I mentioned before, I have one voltage input, which is a battery. Now, I have already pre-configured. This is on channel number 7. I've got a battery. This is a signal coming from the battery. The signal is a voltage. Units are in voltage. In theory, I can read millivolts, but in this case, it's voltage. Alarms, maximum and minimum. This is again only correlates to the collector output, relay outputs, if I want to drive a booster or something. Otherwise, it has no usage. Filter level, damping, sensor type. Basically, I'm reading voltage 0 to 32, and that's it. I save it. In this case, the calibration is linear calibration. Anything that enters in the Albacombi gets read and fed into the NIMIA 2000 or into the display page. If I measure 10 volts, in this case, after the calibration is 10 volts, so there is no calibration, it's just one-to-one. Now, basically, I have created the 3 channels, and if I go to this place, and if you recall, I had one display already created. This display, I'm going to change this, was showing from 0 to 100 of instead of diesel. So I'm going to put diesel percentage. I'm going to save it, and let's see if I have. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to save it, diesel percentage. Now, channel number 2, which is water, is coming from our newly installed sender, which I calibrated before. In this case, is water, and I will put water percentage is gauge times 3, and again is 0 to 100. It's only one green zone. I save it, and then I take the display number 3, and in this case is battery voltage 0 to 14 volts, is all green zone. Now I save it, and it's there. So I have configured my 3 displays. If I go to full view, I have my 3 displays showing information. Now if I move one of the gauges, or one of the diesel, I move manually, mechanically, the sender of diesel, and you see that I go up and down, and going up and down, the sender goes up and down. Nothing special, it's just an indication. 0 to 100%, and that's it. The same thing applies for water. Water goes up, down, okay, and that's it. So I have 2 indications, one of water, another one of diesel. Now the third one is battery. I can it's showing 0 to 14.5. I go with the battery minimum voltage, which is 9.7, and I go battery maximum voltage which is 13.8 or something. Okay, now battery voltage is not very wise to go 0 to 14, because obviously below, say, 10 volts or 8 volts makes no much sense to have anything shown. Now what I can do is go to display number 3. I change this parameter and put 8 volts. I press save. I go to full view, and if you see in here, I've got indication from 8 to 14.5. Now I remember to you that if I want to move the gauges around, I just unlock the padlock, move the gauges where I want, and once they are on the place that I want, I lock it, and this configuration will be remembered next time you open the Albacombi browser. Now obviously right now the indication will be, if I go to minimum in the battery, indication will be 9 point something, and if I go full voltage in the battery, deflection will be maximum. Now there is one very interesting feature that I want to show you, which is if you go to display number 3, and you say okay, minimum value is 10 volts, maximum is still 14.5, and I press save it, and I go to full view. Now the one thing that I wanted to show you is that now my indication goes from 10 to 14. Now if you recall before, I can go battery, I can go below 10 volts. What happens is that if I go below 10 volts, the gauge will stop at 10 volts, because there is no more deflection, but the digital indication will show you that I have a value below that, and it show you in red, which is a very interesting feature to warn you that you have a value below the limit that you have set the gauge. Now the same thing can be done in the tank levels. Say that you want to change your display, which was number 1 showing diesel. Okay, I want to start the indication on 10%, which is very logic. You say, okay, if I go below 10%, I want to have an alarm, like in your car. Now I press save it, I go to full view again. Now, okay, let's see the diesel. If I go down with the diesel, I'm going down, down, down. Okay, and the moment that I go below 10%, the needle stops, but I've got an indication in here that I'm below that. So say that I have 5% of the tank, my gauge will show 0, but I will still get in red what is the actual value there. So in that sense, you can do that not only in the minimum but as well in the maximum. Say that I want to limit my voltage. Say okay, I want to say that my maximum voltage that I want to allow, it's 13.5. I will put 13.5 in there, 13.5 and 13.5, 13.5. Okay, I've got 10 to 13.5. I save it, I go to full view. Now, so I've got 12.5, you see the limit on the battery is 10 to 13.5. I'm right now reading 12.5. I go as before, I go to the minimum battery 9.6. My needle is stopped at 10, but the indication is in red 9.5. I'm going to do the opposite, which is going to maximum. My indication is 3.9 in red. I'm going above the limit, which is 13.5. So in that sense, you can configure your gauges to show anything that you want. So basically the process is you configure your analog channel, and once you have done that, you configure the displays. Now, if I go out of this, if you remember, if you press this Chrome direct access shortcut, has the -- kiosk HTTP 192.168.0.50. This will open directly the system in full view mode. No menus, no nothing. Just you can use it in your dashboard or in your cockpit. Okay, if you just want this to start up automatically when the computer starts, you just copy it and then go to the your startup folder and paste it. In Spanish it's inicio, but in English it's startup. So you just copy there your Chrome shortcut with the kiosk configuration, and that's about it. Once you start your computer, restart your computer, the monitoring page will appear in there.